Welcome to Sustainable Packaging with Cory Connors. Today, I have a really cool guest, Mr. Ian Montgomery, who is the founder and creative director for Guacamole Airplane. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Cory. How are you?
I've heard amazing things about you and your company and your agency, whatever we call it, and I can't wait to talk about what you guys do. Can you tell us how you got started into kind of sustainable packaging in this world?
Oh, well, absolutely. Before I even get started, I'll say we love your TikTok here. I think it's amazing.
Thank you, sir.
Probably like yourself and like most people, most people have sort of a roundabout way into packaging. When I was young, I was interested in art and design. I liked making things and was also interested in environmental issues. I grew up surfing and the sort of ocean connection. And I went to college and I studied environmental science. And I loved that way of thinking, the research and, that style of asking questions. But I didn't want to be a traditional research scientist. So after school, I got a job working as a graphic designer for a clothing company that was really small, but growing quite quickly. It was called Chubby Shorts. And I was the only designer. Yeah. Funny brand. And I was their only designer at the time for a couple of years. So I was working on all sorts of different types of design from, clothing, whether it's woven labels or silk screened, and their website and email campaigns and in-person events. But the most interesting thing to me was their packaging. Like, it was really such a cool challenge. It was, a three-dimensional thing that you interact with and a two-dimensional canvas for art. And it was kind of like a wild time for packaging nerds. Maybe it was like 2012 or 2013 when all those like direct to consumer online brands were coming out, and all of these brands were trying to replace like the really great experience you'd have at a brick and mortar store with packaging. So it was like, we were looking at Warby Parker and Bonobos and all of those early e-commerce brands, like, wow, they're creating such a great experience. But then there's that question of like, a lot of these are pretty wasteful. Like, there's quite a bit of packaging you don't really need. So, and then also in the clothing world, we were using a ton of poly bags. So I spent a lot of time trying to look for alternatives. And at that time, and with the people I was talking to, we really weren't able to do it. It was really frustrating, but the question kind of kept nagging at me. But I stayed working in packaging. I went to work as a packaging designer for a home goods brand called AreaWare, doing production art and die line development for them. And, like most people, had a bunch of random jobs, but one really ended up informing packaging. I worked at a paper making studio for a little while in New York, making knaf and all sorts of fun, blue jeans. It was great. It was super fun. But it eventually had a really lucky opportunity to go to graduate school and at Pratt in New York. And they have a packaging design program that's like very much in the art school style. It's not so much a packaging engineering degree like Michigan State or anything like that. But it was really cool. It was pretty open-ended. You had, most of your time there to work on a self-directed thesis. And myself and my friends, we really used that time to experiment with the materials that could potentially make up the future of packaging, a decade out. And so working a lot with mushroom-based alternatives to foams and chitin and seaweed-based films, and built a series of recycling machines based off these plans from a group called Precious Plastic in the Netherlands that you could run recycled plastic through, or bioplastic. Wow. I can walk over to them in a minute there. It's kind of, our studio's a little messy right now, but we built an injection molder and a shredder and extruder, and we're running all sorts of things through them. But had a really, really great time. And after all that, wanted to set up an agency that combined that environmental science way of research and thinking with the services more traditionally offered by a design agency, not so much focused on branding, but really focused on packaging design and development.
It's amazing how many people have been on this podcast. I think I've had 40 something episodes now. A huge percentage of you guys are surfers. and you, like, Sam Bowie from FlexiHex, John from Cruise Foam, you guys are saving the world, and I want to thank the surfing community from me.
We're all a bunch of hypocrites. We might say we're saving the world, but we're floating in the ocean on these toxic surfboards, doing everything we can to fly around the world to get waves. But maybe it's the guilt that drives us to this work.
Well, at least some of what you do is beneficial.
There we go. Yeah.
I was really stoked to interview Sam Bowie from FlexiHex and John from Cruise Foam. You got so it's a cool community. I'm impressed.
That's good. Well, not all derelicts.
Right. So tell us about Guacamole Airplane. Such a cool name. You can tell us the origin story if you're not tired of telling us the origin story of the name. But tell us what you do. How does it work?
Yeah, so we're a small agency. The team right now, where there's 5 of us for some mixed part-time and full-time, and about probably a little bit more than half of our work is packaging design with an eye towards sustainability. So we'll work with brands or businesses that might have a packaging challenge, something that's they want to ship out, or something that's in development, and really go through a traditional structural packaging design development process with them. Perhaps the only difference, although hopefully it's becoming more common, is at the beginning, we really do a lot of research and alignment on sustainability. We'll compose our sustainability goals in tandem with our design goals, and we'll do an industry-wide material audit of materials that make sense. And beyond materials, we'll look at strategies we can use, whether it's the product lends itself to a reusable packaging model, or if it's really something that we should be focusing on removing plastics from everywhere we can, or if it's something that we should really focus on slimming down volume and weight, or some combination of the three. And then we move towards a manufacturing ready die line, or set of die lines, or set of files. We don't do branding in the sense that we're creating new brand lines or brand guidelines for clients, but we traditionally work with a client's existing set of brand guidelines and kind of work to create brand moments and have those details manifest in our packaging. So we have 2 junior graphic designers on staff that are just lovely. They're wonderful. And then kind of the other portion of our work is sustainability consulting. We'll do that with brands that might have hundreds or thousands of SKUs, beyond something that we can just go through and do one by one. There's no way it'd be possible. No one would be able to. But sort of helping them come up with a sustainability strategy or a roadmap, or something really actionable and helpful for them that they can move whole product categories towards. And whether that's looking at what they can do immediately, or in certain cases, we've created roadmaps for companies of what the next 5 and 10 years should look like in terms of their pilots and manufacturing partners they should sync up with.
That's amazing. So a company, say they set a goal by 2025 or 2030, we're going to have this level of PCR in our content. We're going to be more sustainable, whatever that metric is for them. You guys can help them get to that level. Is that what you're saying?
We're seeing that more and more. That's pretty much exactly what you described is often the starting point of these conversations. And there's usually a little bit of alignment of like, okay, let's make sure that goal is the right goal, and let's talk through a few others that might be worth thinking through. And then, yeah, that's exactly right. Whether working with existing technologies that we can scale at the moment, or we keep a close eye on manufacturers that maybe they're not at like the art school level experimental, but they're experimental in the sense that they've got some funding and they're working towards a pilot plant. We'll keep an eye on, who those organizations are, and, help compose a timeline of when it makes sense to bring the right partners in.
Well done. You have a real reputation in the industry of being one of the leaders in sustainable packaging. And I've always been impressed with what you do and your company does. So thank you for that work.
Oh, thanks for saying that.
Yeah. It's not an easy thing. I'm going to ask you some big questions here, and do your best to answer kind of in what fits within your niche here. What do you think is the role of government and the consumer in sustainable packaging? So that's 2 questions separately.
Oh, that's a great one. And I'd be curious to get your take on it too. Yeah. I think as we think through it, all of our projects sort of lie at this crossroads of, who makes it, whether that's the brand or the manufacturer or both, who ultimately gets the packaging and decides what to do with it, the customer, and then the infrastructure that's in place around recycling or reuse. And, traditionally that's the role of the government, although like TerraCycle and G2 and these companies that are out there probably doing it much better than the government ever did. But it's so whether you call that infrastructure question, infrastructure, government, who knows, but that feels like the real missing piece. I mean, I understand that you're up in Oregon, and Oregon has had like deposit laws for longer than anywhere in the US. And it seems like there's some great things going on there, but infrastructure is really critical in providing like economically viable pathways for whatever type of packaging we're creating to have a second life, whether it's, becoming a new material as viable compost, or like, following some of the waste to energy models that are over in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And, I think the US is a lit, not amazing, not horrible. Like, we just need more. Plastics are the tough one. I think, like, if we could have more investment in plastic film recycling and move
Yeah.
towards having plastic films have some value. And, that's probably a mix of designing value into the plastic and then having the right machinery to sort and reuse plastic films available to most people. The EPR laws are super interesting, and it's cool to follow the plastic taxes that are coming online in the UK and in other places. You'd hate to see those manifest as like higher prices for things like food for the average working family or something. So it's
Right.
all like, oh man, you don't want to create any unintended consequences. But kind of at the crux of it is just like, yeah, I guess the word value, like you want
Right.
enough value to be designed into whatever you're making so that there's a pathway that makes sense, enough that it can be sold for per ton to
Right.
get reclaimed. And then you want that system to work, and that's where government and infrastructure comes in. It's cool to see the more conversations around this with the break free from plastic bill. But that would probably be our dream job, is consulting with the US government on the next 10 years of infrastructure planning.
Oh my God. I love that word value, and I think it's so critical to the future of sustainable packaging. You mentioned Oregon's bottle bill. We were the first state to assign a value to a waste stream to recyclable or more recycled. And the bottle drop system that we have now even has reusable glass bottles that are 10 cents, and you bring them back and then they're washed and cleaned and reused. And so that, I think Oregon and other states like Maine have proven that's feasible. I love that you're also talking about assigning value to materials, because my friend Chandru runs a recycling facility in South Africa. They just launched their EPR, extended producer responsibility for the listeners bill, and he said recycled PET is so valuable now that he has to import it from other countries.
Oh my goodness.
So they've gobbled up all the supply. And if that continues, recycling will become not only necessary, but valuable.
Absolutely. And then it's for designers to have an awareness of that, for designers to understand, okay, like, if we have to use plastic, we know that if we use clear PET or clear white HDPE, there's the demand for that, and it's going to get recycled, and people like your friend who run MRFs are going to, want to buy it and pay a premium for it. But if you're looking at polystyrene or polypropylene or, any dark tinted PET, that value isn't there, and it's not worth designing things that, aren't going to have a pathway forward to be reused.
Totally. And he said one of the cool consequences was Sprite, which is a Coca-Cola brand. I'm sure you know, they changed from green to clear.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, just because the green was hard to recycle. So simple changes like this, we all know it's Sprite. We all know that the label means it's Sprite. It's a very popular drink. So why can't they use clear bottles, right? And then those become more recyclable and more sought after by people like Chandru. So
that's a great story. That's cool.
It's huge change, and it's I think you're right. The government has to step in and say, listen, guys, this is what we're going to do. Okay, everybody on board? All right, let's do it. How do we do it?
If we had a 15-year plan of what our infrastructure looked like in terms of composting, recycling, and waste to energy, oh my gosh, our jobs would be easier.
100% agree. I'm talking to people at different companies like Dow Specialty Packaging or Specialty Plastics. They're working on multi-layer plastics that are all the same material. So instead of having an 11-layer plastic that's 27 different materials that can never be recycled, this will be fully recyclable in the future. And like you said, how do we make it valuable? Well, we make it recyclable, we make it reusable. It's exciting to me what's happening.
Oh, that sounds like a fantastic project. That's great.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. What is the role of manufacturers like, the extended producer responsibility? We talked about that. What is the role of the manufacturer in sustainability?
To be honest, I've been blown away by US manufacturers. I don't think that was the case when I started my career, but yeah, I think most, if not, yeah, a huge majority of US manufacturers know that brands are looking for sustainable solutions and customers want sustainable solutions. So they've made the effort to invest in partnerships or invest in tooling up their manufacturing to work towards, plastic-free solutions or innovative types of molded fiber. And I think it's like I'd be curious to get your take on it, but from my perspective, it's such a exciting time for US packaging manufacturing. Not the things everyone gets excited about, but it's cool to us. I'm just blown away to get emails from reps at manufacturers are like, hey, we got this new line check it out. We'll send you some samples. It's, and it's purely because they're excited about the sustainability of it is such a wonderful thing.
I agree. My friend Adam Peak likes to call us packaging nerds, and I've fully embraced that name.
Yeah,
right?
Nothing wrong with that.
But we are, and what's cool is people outside of packaging, outside of our world, are getting excited about this. I'm getting calls from aunts and uncles and cousins like, hey, this is really cool. Have you seen this? Or I'll get a picture like, have you seen this kind of packaging? Isn't it more sustainable? So really cool. Exciting to see.
Great. Absolutely.
Yeah. So another big question. Do you think we should be focusing more on recyclable packaging or more on compostable packaging?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer is recyclable, and then with an eye towards if we do have more like waste to energy incineration in the next decade or so, then we can revisit that conversation. But there's like nuance to it. And I guess it goes back to what we were just talking about with valuable. It's like recyclable as long as there's enough value in the resin or the material to make it economically viable in recycling. Like aluminum has so much value. So those aluminum cans are going to be recycled. Paper as well, as long as it's not coated with all sorts of gunk and the clear PET you were just talking about, but other plastics, not so much. Composting is interesting. You can use that like value way of thinking in the same way. Like there's not too much value in terms of nutrients to a composter or a farmer if you're just have some hard PLA that's going in there. It's going to be kind of tough to break down and not really provide anything to the soil. It's in a composter's best interest to just sift that stuff out anyway. But if you're thinking through like a seaweed film that's designed to be nutrient rich, oh my gosh, that composters would love that. That's amazing. And they can sell that as nutrient rich compost to local farms or vineyards or whatever, and they're thrilled. So yeah, it's every situation is different. We stick away from compostable packaging in most of our applications, with the exception of anything that's holding food and is going to be a vessel that delivers food waste into the composting stream. Then it seems like a better option.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If it's already soiled by food, then the film should probably focus on a compostable in life. That makes a lot of sense, because who's going to wash it? That's unlikely.
Absolutely. But there are exceptions, like where there's some of the materials that are pretty rapidly compostable, like that. I know you're familiar with the green cell foam or some of the mushroom-based foams, which kind of have to break down a little bit to be compostable. But we have projects that are working with those things as well. And, we think they're great as long as they go beyond just the US, ASTM D6400 standard, and they really can break down more rapidly.
Absolutely. Can you tell us about a recent project that Guacamole Airplane has done that you're excited about, like a brand that you worked with or something? Or is that kind of confidential?
We've got good stuff cooking. I can probably tell you either the names of the brands or the projects, but probably not both.
Sure.
Preference?
Oh, that's up to you. Whatever you're comfortable with.
I think it's kind of cool hearing about what they are. We're working with a big electronics company on, like, they're calling it their 2030 moonshot goals, but it's not a moonshot. We're like, it's very practical. You can do this. That's the one sort of we were mentioning earlier, like working through what their timeline to, carbon negative and plastic free production looks like across, all of their different types of electron. We're working with it. We don't normally do influencer or seeding projects. I'm sure you're familiar with those, but we took on one recently for a shoe project because they're really excited about using it as a showcase for kind of next generation sustainable materials. So totally different way of thinking. We can spend a little bit more money than usual per package and really create something with a fun user experience. We're working with a tile company to ship out tile samples. Traditionally, they're using a ton of foams and plastics, and we're going for a plastic-free solution that really has a nice unboxing experience when someone gets their tile samples. Working with, there's all sorts of stuff cooking, but yeah, those are our exciting ones at the moment.
It is exciting what can be done with paper, molded pulp, and FlexiHex, and Geomi. These kinds of brands and materials are fascinating. How strong they are. I don't know if you saw the TikTok video where I dropped a bottle of wine from 11 feet in the air.
Oh, one of the FlexiHex little wines. Oh, cool.
It survived 11 feet in the air. Sam from FlexiHex challenged me to get up to 12 feet. He's like, I dropped it from, he said, I dropped it from 4 meters. And I said, oh, okay. Well, let's go.
That goes above and beyond anything that's going to happen to it in the mail. So you're safe after 11 feet.
But people will question whether sustainable options are, people know that styrofoam works, but
it's not going to be strong, or it's going to be more expensive all the time. And it's as you're familiar with, it's a cool challenge as a designer, especially in those projects maybe aren't big budget ones, but it's like, how can we be real clever with paper, folding cartons or whatever to just lock this stuff in? Those are some of our favorite challenges.
I love that. Block and embracing, having a cool user experience. At Landsberg Aurora, we call it, it's the promise of what's inside.
Love that. That's cool.
The opening experience is, packaging is cool. It's so awesome what we can accomplish as a design team and as a packaging company for, end users.
Absolutely. I fully agree.
Awesome. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you, Ian, and Guacamole Airplane?
Guacamole Airplane is on LinkedIn. You can just search Guacamole Airplane, or on Instagram, Guacamole Airplane, or you can email me, Ian, IAN, at guacamoleairplane.com.
Awesome. I'd like to thank Landsberg Aurora for your sponsorship of this podcast. For the listeners, please take a minute to review and share it with your friends so we can continue to tell society about sustainable packaging. Thank you so much, Ian. This has been a great episode.
Thank you, Cory.